ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We have heard a number of strategic issues discussed over the last 2 days, a number of issues pertaining to security and defense of Europe, of the eastern flank, and I'm very happy that we have today someone who knows everything about implementing these issues, about how to assure defense and deterrence in practice. Major General Jeffrey Broadwater, what brings you to Europe, and does it have something in common with the Europe Defender 2022 exercises?
In fact, it does. Before I answer that question, I just want to say, sir, thank you very, very much for giving us the opportunity to come here. It's an honor for us to be here, and quite frankly, it's very humbling to listen to all the great speakers and all the panel members that you've had here, and the topics that they've brought up. Quite frankly, it made me, I took a lot of notes yesterday, and I actually kind of modified some of the things that I was going to talk about here today as we talk about interoperability and exercises. And you know, as we kind of look from the strategic level down into the tactical level, where we have a saying that talking ain't fighting. And that when you make an assessment and you have a strategy that's based off of those things, it is very imperative that your soldiers are trained and they are proficient, and that as we work with our partners and allies, we develop this interoperability that we're ready for any contingency. And I always think back to a quote that a non-commissioned officer told me one time. It was by one of the generals in a very bleak period of the United States' time during the Civil War, but it says, every attempt to make war an easy and safe will result in humiliation and disaster. And that was by General Sherman during our Civil War. And I have always kind of thought about that as we prepare for these exercises and any contingency that I've ever been on, or as we prepare for that. And so to answer your question, yes, Defender 2022 is the reason that I'm here right now. And just to tell you a little bit about Defender 2022, this exercise was planned well in advance. And really what it is designed to do is really to show this interoperability or develop readiness between us and our allies. And so the 5th Corps headquarters is currently located down in Krakow, Poland, where we are getting after our training objective of exercising combined command and control of subordinate forces with the LANDCOM component of the Polish military at that location. This is the first time that two kind of core level headquarters have been able to execute this in this large-scale type of operation before. And so, when you think about interoperability and you think about readiness and all the things and the frictions that are associated with that, this really gives us an opportunity at echelon to work those things with our great partners, the Polish military. And so, Defender 22, like I said, it was planned well in advance. I kind of mentioned the training objective, or what we are trying to overall achieve in terms of interoperability at the core level, but there's also a series of events that we kind of talked about in some of the discussions yesterday, and that is the ability to build combat power or sustain combat power in the continent of Europe. And so we've had forces come over from the United States. They're not just regular Army soldiers, they're active duty and National Guard soldiers. And so, participating in this portion of the exercise is around, approximately 3,500 U.S. soldiers, and then, approximately 6,000 multinational, basically from 11 countries that we are exercising in right now or have partners with. But one of those objectives is to get those soldiers and equipment over into Europe in a timely fashion. And then once they're here, they would either fall in on equipment that we have pre-positioned here to exercise that, or they would bring some equipment over, and then we would continue to exercise at the tactical level in terms of that. The exercise is a series of live fire events in this. There's portions that are kind of simulated as you get at the higher level, or computer generated, just kind of based off of trying to achieve certain interoperability objectives that you have. But at the lower level, there's a series of live fire events where tanks and paladins are partnered with Polish, German, just to name a few in certain areas to really get after that interoperability at the lowest level. There's also a wet gap crossing, and I think that there was some pictures on, if you've seen some Twitter posts or things like that on the 5th Corps webpage about a combined wet gap crossing that we did yesterday, that actually I think President Duda was at, that we've worked with Poland and many other countries during that. What is important about that is that, in the discussion yesterday, we talked about how equipment has evolved over time and how infrastructure has impacts in terms of mobility and sustaining these large formations. And so, one of the things that we continue to learn about during this Defender Live Expo is bridge classifications, is, the weight of the roads. We have large or long road marches where equipment came in on the ports of Spain, and now they will move up by rail and commercial line haul through various countries in order to make sure that we can get after that strategic level of being able to move equipment around on the continent of Europe. And so that equipment came in Spain, it crossed in various different countries, and it was actually Greece, it wasn't Spain. And then they will conduct a road march basically in Lithuania as we go. So those are some of the things that we're doing. And then at the end of the month, we will do a lethal fires exercise up in Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. That will focus on our ability to share information and work the interoperability piece through digits. When you think about command and control of putting precision fires where you want to in Estonia, but that will come back through a combined headquarters that's down in Krakow, Poland, and it will not just be by picking up a phone and calling, right? So we will actually use systems that will pass that information, and we will focus on getting better and improving on that as we continue to move on. Once the exercise is done, we will capture lessons learned, and then we will put those back into Defender 23 that will be scheduled for next year. And of course, we'll learn more lessons on working with our partners and allies to conduct what we call after actions reviews in order to make sure that we are truly capturing what we have learned and not just kind of made a mistake one or two times, but looking at general trends where we can move forward. The equipment will be turned in, and those soldiers will return back. And so that's kind of Defender 22 in a nutshell. This was again planned well in advance, designed to build readiness with our partners, and that is kind of the long answer on why I'm here right now.
A much appreciated answer. Thank you, General. Well, thank you for providing this overview of Defender Europe 2022. And as a matter of fact, it's yet another high visibility exercise here in the eastern flank, engaging US and its allies and partners, which of course has to be considered a part of defense and deterrence posture. It's a way of signaling of the credibility of the defense and deterrence policy of NATO and the commitment of the US to defend its European allies. And in this context, how about we went back and come back to the moment when you first learned that the 5th Corps was being resurrected, was being reestablished? How did you think about your mission, about the necessities of defense and deterrence and working with allies and partners in the Eastern term at that time, this 3 years ago or so?
Quite frankly, when you look at that, I think you say that 5th Corps was reestablished just in time, right? Our focus is in Europe, and we have been focusing on that really since General Kołaszewski was really the first soldier that built the systems and got all the equipment ready to move into 5th Corps, so where it is. And so, our mission is to provide trained and ready forces. And so, in terms of Fifth Corps being developed, we went through a series of exercises. I was not there in the initial portion. I was a division commander in 1st Cav at that time. I joined Fifth Corps in August of 2021, where we did our kind of validation exercise down in Grafenwehr, Germany, that got us ready to execute this mission. And then we did our first exercise with our NATO partners called Steadfast Leda. That was up in Bydgoszcz, Poland, that we were able to really kind of learn and integrate into many of the other corps. The Multinational Corps in Spain, for example, Multinational Corps Greece, Multinational Corps Northeast up in Szczecin, Poland, and then the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps from the UK participated in this. And so it really was the first time that we were able to integrate a corps level headquarters in some time into the interoperability or to validate some of our systems and processes in a NATO fashion right before the Thanksgiving time period. Then, of course, we all know kind of how things have moved forward here in the world, which really put us in a position to get after our #1 task of providing trained and ready forces. And I alluded to it initially, but one of the challenges that is hard to overcome for any contingency that we would have to face is the tyranny of distance. And when you think about that in a contested environment, which it would be, that would create more challenges. And so in terms of Fifth Corps being able to provide this tactical headquarters, it really kind of gave us a heads up or put us in a position a little bit quicker than we normally could. And so we were able to kind of focus on our current operations, which is really reinforcing our partners as we have sent forces down in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia in order to reinforce our allies in that location, as well as what I discussed there up in the Baltic region as well, focusing on these exercises. So it put us in a great position to really kind of help us build these relationships, I think, a lot faster. Because when you talk about interoperability, I think that sometimes we have a tendency to think that technology is really, really great, and it is, but there are challenges to that. And that if you don't ever exercise those challenges, if you don't ever add rigor to your exercises, you're not ever going to find out what's wrong with those systems when it comes time to work at a distance that we have to operate inside of Europe. And so, we learn just as much from our partners, whatever country that we are in terms of how we can get better at our systems, but how we get better at this interoperability to build readiness as we move forward.
Well, you mentioned partners and allies quite a number of times. You mentioned the keyword multinationality, which is now the way things go with regards to defense and deterrence, because it's an allied effort, so to say. But we know very well that interoperability, that multinationality at some levels is a challenge, and it can make commanders face a number of challenges. So in this context of over the couple of years of your experience, what would you consider the biggest success of the Fifth Corps with regards to working with allies in this multinational setting? What do you consider to be the biggest achievement of U.S. Army and your unit in particular?
I would tell you that I think that it is our ability to build relationships, right? They're extremely important to us wherever we go, because it not only all people learn at different fashions, right? And so I will go back to one of the things that we continue to kind of learn in any exercise, and that is sustaining a large force over distance, right? When you have a large amount of armored vehicles and soldiers that are moving on different roads, and they're in different countries that all have different type of caveats that are associated with them, and it's in a multinational field. That makes it a little different, just to make sure that the interoperability and those relationships to work through the friction points are truly there. And so, while we continue and put great effort in terms of building those relationships and learning from our great allies and partners on ways to improve that, that would probably, I would say, be our biggest opportunity to make sure that we're making a difference in terms of interoperability while building readiness inside of our organizations and our allies and partners.
And as a matter of fact, you pointed to the development which is perhaps widely seen not only in the, let's say, strategic community, people who professionally work with defense issues, but also visible in media all across the eastern flank countries. So the fact that it has been a recent, so to say, development to see this kind of exercises, to see the soldiers, the equipment being moved within exercises from US, from Western Europe to Poland, to other eastern flank nations. The first biggest of this kind was Defender Europe 20. Saying that it might have seemed that we have achieved already a lot, that the lessons have been identified. Now it's just about planning further exercises and taking further lessons learned as regards, as you mentioned, the systems, the way how force elements from different command elements from different nations cooperate. Is it the mission accomplished in this sense, or you can see still further, maybe not challenges, but further goals for the future with regards to further strengthening the military cooperation of U.S. Army and the 5th Corps with allies and partners?
I don't think that you can ever be satisfied with what you're trying to achieve, especially when you deal in an environment that the way that the world currently is. But I think that one area that we can continue to improve on in terms of just interoperability and building relationships is I'll go back to this increasing rigor, right? And building, for just a sports phrase, but reps and sets inside of how well we train. Yesterday, a lot of the panels kind of talked a little bit about exercises and what we were doing, and they are so extremely important just because of the fact that not all soldiers can participate in the same exercise, and so you're building that depth inside your formation, you're building that experience, and you're learning and growing to a point where you can add rigor, so that if there is some contingency and there are other frictions that would be out there, you're able to understand that a little bit better because you are proficient in your basic task, and you're able to execute that. I also think that allows the more exercises that you do with rigor, it allows you to learn faster, right? As all individuals and all units learn at a different pace, the ability to learn faster and learn the right lessons, right? And focus on improving is something that I think that is extremely important, and a place that I think that we can continue to grow and build and move forward, not only just in our headquarters, but in all headquarters, as we really look to kind of build this interoperability in not just all NATO, but other partners as well.
We need to continue to build interoperability. We need to continue understand also high visibility exercises. This is definitely something what Eastern flank nations would like to see, and what may be objectively required to further reinforce credibility of defense and deterrence against Russia. This all pertains to the future posture to the issue of the future posture of NATO in the eastern flank. And we have been discussing numbers. There's been recent communications from NATO highlighting that there's been like around 40,000 troops from different countries under direct NATO command in the eastern flank now, being a response to Russian invasion on Ukraine. So that's a huge number. We have heard also about different kind of capabilities. We've seen aircrafts flying over our countries, different kinds of aircraft. So we can see this, let's say, visible proofs of defense and deterrence working. But at the same time, in terms of things which are discussed perhaps almost exclusively, I would dare to say, by the military, the readiness, the fact that the ability of the force to actually start fighting from day one. What will be your message for the allies with regards to the future for allies and partners here in the eastern flank? How to, through exercises, through building interoperability, how to build this readiness of the force to fight from day one?
You know, readiness, in my opinion, builds confidence, right? It builds confidence in your formation. It builds confidence in your leaders. It builds confidence in the soldiers that fill out your formation. They're not just confident in their ability to execute their task and their leaders, but they're also develop confidence in their equipment, and they are ready to fight. Or they are ready to respond to any contingency that they have. And so, you know, you kind of mentioned deterrence there, you know, for a minute, just to, you know, give you an example. So, you know, right now on the continent of Europe, there are 3 armor brigade combat teams that are, you know, operating, that are focusing on exercises and improving their own readiness, but also working with our allies and partners to work this. The interoperability piece. And so, you know, I kind of talked a little bit about Defender 20, the portion, or Defender 22 on the portion of the wet gap crossings that we are doing, and the combined live fires that are, you know, taking place on the German-Polish border and inside Poland, and then the lethal fires up in the Baltics. But, you know, there is other training that is going on inside of other, you know, partnered with other Polish units, and as well down in a, you know, place called Grafenwehr, the training area down in Germany, where there are 3 armor brigade combat teams that are truly, you know, improving every day, that if we are called upon, that we will be ready to execute. And that in itself, I think, is deterrence in terms of just the commitment of our soldiers to get better and improve each and every day, as you think about this. You know, the other point that I wanted to kind of to talk about there, the question that you had, and we'll go back to increasing rigor. You know, it was brought up yesterday, I think, in the first panel about kind of reconstitution and, you know, what we call inside of the Army consolidation of gains. And so, you know, that sometimes, you know, especially when you're thinking of large-scale ground combat operations, like, you know, we're seeing in Ukraine and in other places, that part is overlooked. But, you know, when you look about interoperability and you talk about partners, we talk, you know, a great deal about our partners with military forces, but, you know, we can't forget, you know, NGOs and government officials in terms of how we can quickly seek opportunities to you know, get constructive reconstruction going on in terms of getting, you know, human services and trade back into areas that sometimes that we would overlook if we don't develop leaders and we aren't thinking about that inside our exercises that we are doing. And so, you know, I think that we're continuing to evolve and get better in that as we focus. And that, you know, again, as one of the panel members discussed yesterday, that, you know, that is something that we are trying to make sure that we focus on at every level, that we don't miss an opportunity inside of our own organizations to quickly try to do that consolidation of gains that we discuss. Or that's what we say it is.
Thank you, General. Very important words. We have still 5 minutes left to discuss, and perhaps there are questions in the audience. I can see Director Sławomir Dębski in the front row.
Well, I will have very brief question. We all are watching war in Ukraine. And definitely Russians would learn something from Ukrainians and their way of war. So my question to you, referring to your military experience, is what lessons we should draw from the way how Ukrainians are fighting. And what we should expect from Russian adaptation to the new kind of the warfare Ukrainians show.
As many panel members has said, I think that it might be a little too early to really kind of hone in on specific lessons learned in terms of what we should be focused on. But I will go back to what one of the panel members said in terms of, and what I alluded to initially, is the sustainment of a large force over distance, right? And just the fact that, having been in exercises and had that opportunity to mess that up a couple times myself, I can tell you that is a very, very challenging thing to do. And then when you think about weather and you think about the friction of different rail gauges, you think about the friction of weight and roads, without having the experience of being in those certain lessons, that is something that regardless of where it is, I think that is something that we have to continue to make sure that we focus on and continue to improve. The second one that sticks out to me and was discussed was the ability of building depth inside of formation. And so, I'm specifically talking about, we have a great non-commissioned officer corps inside the United States Army, as well as other countries do as well. And that when you think about the fog of war and the friction and all those things that are associated with that, the ability for junior leaders to be able to execute within guidance and inside of certain areas and feel confident in themselves and in their equipment to make those decisions, I think that is something that we should continue to sustain and continue to grow and develop. And that, again, only gets grown by adding more friction and more rigor in exercises to make sure that individuals are growing on that one. In terms of, look, I think that every professional organization, whether it be in the military or anywhere, is going to, if they are good, they will learn from their mistakes. And I think that if you look at the war in Russia and Ukraine, that both sides will continue to grow and learn from their mistakes. And as one of the gentlemen kind of talked about in one of the panels about, as a strategy, you assess it and you make changes to that and move forward. We'll see if they take the right lessons and they move forward in terms of trying to improve their position in themselves.
Thank you, General. With less than 2 minutes, I can take one more brief question from the back row. Please introduce yourself.
Ray Wojcik from the Center of European Policy Analysis. General, marching great discussion. It's been an honor for me for many, many years to work with the Polish armed forces and watch them develop over many years. Major transformative phases of the land forces were deploying with us to Iraq, Afghanistan, that helped transformation. And then since 2014, all our rotational deployments that have grown and grown, leading up to this point. And that point you made about the core-to-core activity down in Krakow, that's absolutely significant. I just want to ask, General, if you can, and I know it's a policy decision and there's a lot of discussion, this topic that's come up in the last few days, forward defense, as you look at the interaction, the exercise capability, the rotation deployments are very, very important to our capabilities, but also I think we need to get back to a forward defense posture, have a healthy mix of rotations and permanent forces in Poland. As you see the front and look at Poland and their capabilities, if you have a comment on what you think about forward defense or where you think you might recommend we look at as a NATO alliance in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Ray. I guess this issue deserves yet another panel or another conference. So, yeah. General,
I think there's going to be one down in Madrid. I think that we'll kind of discuss that at a later time here. So again, I'm not a policy guy. I'm focused on making sure that we are interoperability at the lowest level to ensure that fires are in the right spot at the right time and place. But to kind of answer your question, this is a balance of the tyranny of distance is a challenge. And how do you overcome that based off of other factors that are associated, inside of factors, I think is something that should be addressed, and will continue to move forward in terms of that, because that allows a little bit more daily interaction than if you were maybe in some other location that would require a phone call. Being there matters, I think, in terms of building this interoperability and building these relationships.
Thank you, General. Thank you for sharing with us the nuts and bolts of defense and deterrence, which are exercises and interoperability building. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to finish now, although I'm sure we could continue for much longer. Please join me in thanking Major General Jeffrey Broadwater.
Thank you.